Hi everybody, this is a film about how to make a plushie. Here's some examples that students have made. And the supplies that you need are somewhat simple. It's good to have paper and pencil, a needle. You can have some regular thread or some embroidery thread, some scissors. I'm using felt today, but you can use any fabric. Maybe in your house you have an old t-shirt that you might want to use. I'm going to start by figuring out how much fabric I have. And I noticed that this yellow piece is probably a good size. I'll trace that on a piece of paper. And I'm thinking today that I might make a guy. So I'm being very light while I'm thinking about it. And once I get the general shape, I'll press a little bit harder with my pencil. If I'm making something that has arms and legs, I need those arms and legs to be pretty thick. It's just easier when you're sewing. So I'll find my line of symmetry, I'll fold it in half, I'll pick the side that I like better, and with the paper folded, I'll cut it. I'll open him up. He looks all even, but his legs look a little weird. So I'll cut those a little bit farther apart. There we go. He fits nicely on my yellow fabric. I'm going to use a pen to trace around him. Obviously, I've sped up my film a little bit. And I don't really want to have to cut him out twice. So I'm going to put him on top of the pink fabric. And just to be able to nestle in and know where I am, I'm going to cut a little bit of that extra fabric off so that I can cinch him right up to the edge of the pink fabric. I didn't mention pins in the opening, but pins can be really useful. I'm going to pin him together by keeping the pins on the inside of my guy and pointing them out towards the edge. Now I can cut all around him. I can cut 2 pieces at one time. You don't have to. You could cut the 2 pieces separately, but I'm saving a little time. I'm going to leave the pins in because he's easier to sew that way. I'm going to use embroidery floss today. I'm going to cut a piece that goes from about my fingertips to my elbow. So I'll measure that out and I'll cut it. And I'll tell you, embroidery floss is like 6 threads put together. Some people just like to use 3 of those. So I have a little frantic sped up piece of film here that shows me separating those into 2 bundles of 3. Here I am about to thread my needle, so I'll push those threads together and I'll push them through the eye of the needle and I'll pull part way. I like to sew with a single thread, so check that out. My tail goes kind of halfway down and then my thread continues on to be single. Here's my favorite way to make a knot on the end. I wind it around my finger twice, and then I roll my fingers together, and when I push on it, it makes just a big mess, and that mess becomes an excellent knot. So I have my thread ready to go. I'm going to pick a spot on my guy. I'm going to start on the inside because I want to hide my knot. So watch this. The knot's going to be on the inside. I'll squish it in there where no one will see it. I'm beginning something called a whip stitch or an overhand stitch. I want you to see how I'm holding my needle. I'm grabbing those threads together so that it's one strong unit. Don't just hold the needle, hold the threads together. I'll insert my needle on the back side, in this case the pink side, and push through to the yellow. Inserting it in the back, pushing through to the yellow, and notice that when I pull, I'm pulling on the thread. The needle just happens to be in my hand, but I've got that thread between my fingers. So let's speed things up. So if I start to double up my thread, I can scoot it down a little bit. And then I'm going to keep going. I skipped a little bit there. Sewing, sewing, sewing. Oh, I'm starting to run out of thread. I don't want to get too close to the end. Look at that. If I sew too much longer, I'll be sorry because there won't be enough thread left to tie a knot. I'm going to pinch the thread instead of the needle. And I will show you my favorite way to make a knot. So I'm going to push the threaded needle in. There it is. Push it in. And look at my thumb there on the left. I pick it up with my right hand. I'm going to take 3 trips around that needle. There's trip 1. My thumb locks it in. Trip 2. My thumb locks it in. And trip 3. My thumb locks it in. My needle is still threaded. I'm going to hold it down with my thumb. And when I pull on the thread and not the needle, oh, I'm going to make a nice big knot. I want no one to see the end of my thread, so I'm going to hide it way up inside my guy. There he goes. It's like I'm performing surgery. I'm just going to let it pop out wherever it does. Get my scissors and cut it, and it's all hidden inside. Get rid of that little piece of thread, and now I'm going to thread my needle again. So I'll walk you through it again because it takes a little practice. So I'll put the thread through the eye. I'll leave it 1 single tail at the end, 2 wraps around my finger, a roll, and I have a big gooey knot. I'm going to pick up where I left off, and just like at the beginning, I want to hide my knot, so I'm going inside my guy so that that knot's on the inside of his leg where nobody will see it. There it is. And then I will start my whip stitch again, just getting my thread settled. And please remember, I'm holding the thread when I pull. I'm not holding the needle. That leg's in my way. You'll figure out how to hold the thread and not the needle when your needle keeps coming unthreaded, and that will probably frustrate you. By the way, another frustrating thing can be that your thread starts to twirl. You can hold it out like I just did and let it untwirl a little bit. So here I am. I'm going to keep going around the edge. I'm keeping my eye on how long my thread is because I can keep stretching it out, but pretty soon I know that I need enough to tie one of those knots. So my thumb is ready. I'm going to take 1 trip, 2 trips, 3 trips around the needle, and I will pull. I'll grab onto that thread, give it a nice pull, and I'm going to hide it inside my guy. I'll take out some of these pins. Now I've got a pretty big opening here. It's a little bigger than I want, so I'm ready for some more thread. But I think if I want to sew any details on, maybe I should sew those on now. So I was thinking I'd show you one side of sewing details on. So here's some things I'm going to use as eyeballs. Wrap around my finger, give it a little twirl. So on one side, I'll put some red beaded eyeballs, and I'll put my needle inside where no one can see my knot. I'll thread it through the hole in my bead. I've got a puffy out eyeball, and I'll stick my thread back through. I'm realizing that if I set this eyeball on its side, it would actually look more like a real eyeball. There are no rules when it comes on to sewing something like this. It's just whatever you can manage to work out to get something where you want it to be. One eye's down. I'm going to put the other eye on. By the way, my one camera broke, so this is going to look a little different. 1, 2, 3 twirls around. Give it a pull. There's my knot. I'm going to scoot my thread just over a little bit since that's where I want to be anyway. And now I'm going to sew a little bit more of my whip stitch. I just don't want to sew him all the way closed because I need an opening for the stuffing. So here's another chance to practice a knot. I haven't left myself much thread. So I'm going to try to do my little trick where I wrap the thread around 3 times. But oh man, I haven't left enough. Oh, it came undone. Do I give up? No. I'm going to wrap it 3 times. And then my little trick is that I'm just going to go back to the eye and re-thread the needle. Which is taking me a minute. Like most good things in life, sewing takes a little practice, and once you've practiced, you're going to love it. So I pull, and just like all the other times, I'm going to hide the end of that somewhere in his face. Look at that, comes right out between his eyes. So when it comes to stuffing my guy, I'm going to use some real stuffing, but you can stuff him with anything. You can clip up some old fabric and stuff him with that. I just wouldn't stuff him with anything paper. You could try stuffing him with a plastic bag or some old baggies if you wanted to, and then he'll crinkle. So I'll put the stuffing down in there. I want to get down in the limbs first. I think I'll take the eraser cap off this pencil to help me. And I'm just going to work that pencil way down into his leg. See if I can get that stuffing to go in there. Man, it's being stubborn. It doesn't want to. Finally got it in there. So I'll just keep putting in small bits of stuffing and getting it down in all of the ends of the arms and legs first before I try to stuff the middle. So those legs are looking much better. I'll start to work on his arms now. Some people get excited, they want to put a lot of stuffing in, and it makes your guy really kind of puffy. And if you want him to be a little bit squishy, then you don't need to put in quite as much stuffing. I'm kind of working those things down to his belly, and I notice the top of his head looks like a mouth. Now, if I turn it around, he looks like a frog. Once I have enough in, maybe I'll take one of my straight pins just to hold him close. Wow, here we go, threading a needle again. It's probably our 3rd or 4th time for the project. Making another knot. I bet you're getting good at it by now. I'll go inside of his head with my knot because I don't want it to show. And then I'm going to whip stitch the top of him closed. I put my pin back in because his stuffing wanted to come out. As soon as those pins are in your way, you can take them out. So here I am getting very close to where I started. And again, 3 trips around the needle and pull. Stick that needle in him somewhere, have that come out. Wow, check him out. So I showed you the other side where you can sew. The other thing you can do is you can just glue details on. So if you're using something like felt, you can make yourself some eyes. I like using fabric glue, but I happen to have some regular glue today, and that's what I'll use for my demonstration. So I'll glue his eyes on. You want to try to get glue across most of the parts. The glue will dry hard, so you want to keep it just under the fabric. I'll make him a big giant mouth. And you'll want to let this glue dry overnight before you play with them. And just for fun, I think I'll give the pink side a little heart. It's a little lopsided. I'll fix that with my scissors. Get some glue on there. And I've got my first plushie. There he is, pink on one side, yellow on the other. Pretty darn cool.